We're in Orchot Tzaddikim, and please subscribe to this channel, give it a thumbs up, hit the notification so that you know when a new class is being given. And we're on page 100 of Orchot Tzaddikim, the gate of humility. It's on the last couple of words. But the trait of humility and lowness are one. But through the trait of humility and lowness, one attains all good. For it says in Mishlei, to the humble he gives favor. And it's worthwhile just to see these notes. He says, to the humble he gives favors. He says, when an individual humbles not only to those, and humbles himself, not only to those who are greater than him, but to all people, Hashem will see to it that the person will find favor in the eyes of all. Hashem pays midah keneged midah, measure for measure. An individual who is humble naturally honors others. Hashem will therefore see to it that the person receives honor from others as well. So if I humble myself and I honor somebody who is not dressed properly, in other words, we would like to honor somebody who's dressed with a shirt and a tie, as it were. But I even honor the guy who has his shirt untucked and looks like a bum. Short pants. By the way, his underwear showing and the other thing like that. If I show the guy honor, I treat him like a human being instead of like an animal, so then he will treat me, he will reciprocate and hopefully treat me well. But regardless of that, Hashem, if I'm doing it l'shem shamayim, again, everything has to be done l'shem shamayim. Nothing can be done for just the sake of I want to show how great I am. It has to be l'shem shamayim. I really have to see this person as somebody who is important, because, as I said last week, if he is poor and downtrodden, that is from Hashem too, and he is being and Hashem is cleansing him for the next world, as it were. So if Hashem cares and loves him so much to do that, who am I to belittle that? Okay, so if you have that sort of mindset, then all these people on the streets, you can feel sorry for them, as it were, but you still have to show them respect. Okay.
Does this kind of tie in with the Pirkei Avos, that not to chase after honor, but to run away from it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. There's all of his stuff, basically. That's what I said in the Fred Talks. If you learn Pirkei Avot and you internalize Pirkei Avot, you will have an easy life. 2 books I would tell you internalize: Pirkei Avot and Talmud Devorah. Wow. Those 2 books. And I would even tell you, if I had to pick a part of Talmud Devorah, but I would still say the whole book, but certainly the first chapter, when he's going through the 13 attributes of God. If you just internalize those things, you won't be angry anymore. Everything, your life will be, you'll see everything through that spectrum. And so now I understand everything's coming from Hashem. Everything is coming from Hashem. There's not one thing that doesn't come from Hashem. And so now I can go on with life. I don't get depressed anymore. Depression is over if I can internalize it. Again, you have to really internalize it. Then there is no place for depression, because it's all coming from God. So even if a person never has something going on, he says, this is from Hashem. And it's for my sake. Hashem is doing this for me. How can I be upset about that? It's a beautiful thing, a beautiful way to look at life. Again, regardless of it's good or bad, of what's happening to you is what we would consider good or bad. But it's all, in that vision, it's all good. That's why I said, if one learns Pirkei Avot and internalizes what we learn from Pirkei Avot, what we internalize from Talmud Devorah, from the palm tree of Devorah, then you have an easy life. You have an easy life. Most people can read it, and most people do not internalize it. And I have my problems too with internalizing. I can give the speech all day long, but it's very, very difficult. And at that moment, when you need it the most, to internalize it, somebody can remind you, and then you can say, "Oh, you're right. You know what? You're right." There was a book that I used to read here, 2 Minutes to Bitachon by Schaefer. Okay, this is another thing, that if I can internalize what he was saying and really, really grab it, again, there's nothing that you can't do anything. The stock market goes up, stock market goes down. Your wife yells at you, your husband yells at you, whatever, the spouse yells. The kids did something wrong. Your boss yells at you. It's all irrelevant. You take the Musar, but you shouldn't. It's not them yelling at you. It's Hashem. They're just Hashem's mouthpiece at that point. Somebody gives you, you cut somebody off, and they give you, how's the nicer expression? The bird. Okay, they give you the bird, and you know what? You can get angry at them, or somebody cuts you off. You can get angry at them, or you can just say, okay, what did I do that Hashem paid me in such a manner? What did I do? Obviously, I cut somebody off. I didn't show somebody kavod. So Hashem makes it that I don't get kavod. Mida keneged mida is the most important thing. Again, I have to internalize it. If I don't internalize it, that doesn't work. So that's why you're saying, and it's going to get into a whole thing here, but in the notes. So that's why I said, let's go through the notes here. So we continue. It says, since he has favor in the eyes of Hashem, he shouts, and is immediately answered, as is written, before they call, I will have answered. And he says, again, the note, I will have answered. At times Hashem will respond to your call even before you call out, and at times he will respond to you as you are calling out. How great is that power of humility! When a person's prayers are rooted in sincerity and humility, he merits an immediate response. And then he continues, he says, he does mitzvot, and they are accepted with pleasure and joy, as it is written, for Hashem has already accepted your deeds. And what is more, he desires them, as is written, and the offerings of Yehuda and Yerushalayim will be pleasing to Hashem. So he said, in number 10, for Hashem has already accepted your deeds, whether it be Torah study, prayer, giving charity, or any other mitzvah, as long as the mitzvah was performed with a sense of humility and for the sake of Hashem. The response from above is, eat and drink with joy and good heart, for Hashem has already approved your deeds. It sounds easy, okay? It's not. It's really a training. That today everything I'm doing is l'shem shemaim. Normally when I'm eating, when I'm drinking, it's not l'shem shemaim. It's l'shem stomach. I'm hungry, or l'shem boredom, right? You come home and you're bored, so you take something to eat because you're bored. You're depressed. You take something to eat. You have you're watching TV or you're on the internet. You need something to do, so you started to drink. If those who smoke, they smoke. I would say that smokers are the worst, because what they do is, I shouldn't say, that came out wrong. It's the worst thing for the smoker, not the other worst, but the addiction is the worst thing for them, because what happens? They wake up in the morning, and in order to wake up, they have to have a cigarette. Then if they're a man, while they're shaving, they have a cigarette. And if they're a woman, I don't know women, I only know men. I see the men doing it. So when they're shaving, when they sit down for breakfast, they have a cigarette.
When I was a kid, I used to work at the bowling alley.
Right.
I think I told you that there was men there that smoked so much.
Right.
They would be drinking their coffee and smoking, and then they would order a hamburger from the counter.
Right.
And they'd have the cigarette, they'd take a bite, puff, bite.
Right.
They'd get down to the stub, and before the ash would go out,
they would light
up a new one.
That's what we call chain smokers. Right.
Wow.
But but I'm just saying, I lived with a smoker, so I know that you get in the car, they have to light a cigarette up before they start the engine up. Yeah. And I mean, that's just what it was. Why they do it? Because they're going to drive, so it's easier to drive it's easier to start the cigarette before you drive. Otherwise you have to light it while you're driving. That's a little more difficult. Yeah. Although again, it's thank God for cigarette lighters in your car, and so on and so forth. But then even then, you're driving. You had to hit in the old days. They used to hit the lighter before they would put it back. And they would hit it to knock out any
ash stuck to it.
Any ash.
Tap it on the ash
otherwise, they were told it would burn out. So they would.
Worst case yet, you're smoking and the burning ember on the end drops down between on your lap.
Oh, that's exciting. Is that right?
You got to come to a screeching stop.
Right. So I mean, all those sort of things. So when I'm doing all these things, I'm drinking. If it's not l'shem shamayim, it's because I'm either bored or hungry or whatever. That's when it's no good. When I do a mitzvah, if it's not l'shem shamayim, and when would I do a mitzvah not l'shem shamayim? You would argue. If I'm doing a mitzvah, isn't by definition is shem shamayim? Isn't it for the sake of heaven? Obviously, that's why I'm doing the mitzvah. The answer is no. Why do I go to minyan? So that people will see me. Think about that. I go to minyan. Why do I put tefillin on? Because that's what people do at minyan. Because if I don't go to minyan, do I put tefillin on? Maybe not. Do I put tzitzis on? Maybe not. I tuck my tzitzis in. Nobody knows I'm wearing tzitzis, right? So some people don't wear tzitzis. It's not comfortable to them. It's the easiest mitzvah in the world. Think about that. I put it in Talis Katana. What's the big thing? Say a bracha. Don't say a bracha. Who cares? The mitzvah is to wear it. So now I wear it. They tell me they can't because they sweat too much or this or that. My father didn't do it. My Zaidi didn't do it. I didn't grow up doing it. I grew up doing it. I threw it off. All the foolishness that goes with it. But again, I mean, there's so many things that in the shul will make Havdalah. Okay? The question is, how many people, if we didn't make Havdalah here, would they go home and make Havdalah? Some people would not. Because they didn't see their father or their father. They didn't see their father doing it, or the Rosh Yeshiva didn't do it, or some Mishagas. Okay? That they didn't do it. It's a mitzvah. Kiddush Levana. Again, all these things. If I don't have a minyan, the odds are many times either you'll forget, or you won't do it because it's not in your mind, it's not in your radar. When you're coming to shul, so that becomes radar. So I do it. So is it l'shem shem? I had a guy who would come to minyan, and at minyan, he would read Torah because he liked to read. That was his thing. Not here. Okay, he liked to read, so he'd read Torah, but he never davened. Never davened. And he told me, Rabbi, the only reason I come to the minyan is for community. So I know you need me, so I come.
During the davening, when he would just be reading the Chumash, you mean what?
Chumash, he would read Chumash, or he would read Jewish history. He liked to read. So he was bored, otherwise just sit there. He even read the Siddur one time straight with all the commentaries. Wow. He wanted to get some information.
Interesting. We
had some people like that here who used to read also, but he at least davened. Okay. But that's what I'm saying. You have people. You're doing it l'shem shamayim. The answer is, I can't talk for anybody here. But the person who was coming, he said straight, I'm not doing it for God. I'm doing it for community. Oh. So here he was doing a mitzvah, but it was only for community. So you have people who do mitzvah, give tzedakah. Are they doing it l'shem shamayim, or are they doing it l'shem? I want my kavod. I want my kavod. I want my name in that bulletin. I gave tzedakah. Or here you go through the thing. Who's giving tzedakah? And so you smash the money together, And so some people give, some people don't. Some people hide what they're giving. Some people wait after it. But bottom line is, somebody makes a big noise about it. Again, you're doing l'shem shamayim, or you're doing it for because people are going to look at you and say you never give. So you want to save your reputation. That's what I'm saying. It's really, we can look at these things, but then I have to think of why I'm doing it. Am I doing it for the right reason or not? By the way, I'm not saying that one shouldn't do it for the wrong reason. One should do it for the wrong reason.
Yeah, we learned that someplace.
Right. Lo lishma, bo lishma. Even if I start doing it for the wrong reason, ultimately I'll come to do it for the right reason. So I'm not against somebody coming to shul and putting tefillin on, even if they don't mean it. And I loved when the guy came to the shul and said, I'm only doing it for community, because ultimately he would come to want to do it. I mean, hopefully, ultimately he would want to come to do it because it's the right thing to do in God's eyes. So that's what I'm saying. Okay, now let's go on. And it says, in the offering of Judah and Yerushalayim should be pleasing to Hashem. So he says, so pleasing and desirous will these prayers be, that Hashem will accept them kimei olam, which means as in the days of Moshe, uchashnaim kadmoniot, which refers to Shlomo Melech, when the fire of Hashem descended and consumed their offerings. Alternatively, the Malbim says kimei olam, which means like the days of the world, should be understood as to means the days of Noah, in the earlier years, previous years, as in the days of Hevel, when there was no avodah zarah, no idol worship. Now here we're going to go into the second part, and he's going to give you a note of caution. This note of caution in the next paragraph that he writes is very important. So let's just go through the main thing of the book. And it says, what is humility? This is the Orchot Tzaddikim's definition of humility. It is submission and lowliness of spirit and regarding oneself as nothing. A man is obliged at all times and on every occasion to be unworthy in his eyes and lowly of spirit and soft of heart and broken spirited. The root of humility, I'm going to read what he says first, and then we'll go through the note. The root of humility vis-a-vis the Creator is one thinking to himself when he is yet calm and tranquil and healthy and rich, that Hashem has given him good, although he is not worthy of it. He must reflect upon the greatness of Hashem and exaltations of his glory and think, what am I? Am I not an extremely lowly creature in a lowly temporal world? And all the good things that I can do are nothing but a drop in the ocean compared to what I am obligated to do. And he must do everything for the sake of Hashem, and not for the sake of honor, not to flatter any man, and not for any personal pleasure, but all for the sake of his great name. Now let's go back. Okay, you heard that? You heard that whole thing. He says you have to be low. You have to think you're horrible. Okay, so he says. So now Rabbi Yaakov says a note of caution. Okay, because somebody hearing that is going to go into major depression. I'm worthless. I'm not. Okay, there you go. Okay, he says this paragraph could very easily send a person into a state of depression. Expressions such as you are weak, you are nothing, and so on only serve to diminish a person's self-esteem. Rabbi Yaakov is speaking to us in 2019. The Orchot Tzaddikim was speaking to people in the 1500s, or whatever he was around, okay? Different people, different times, okay?
Same problem.
Yeah, but in those days I could look at you and say, you're worthless, and you're going to try to do something with that. So here is, and he doesn't mean it in those words. That's what he says. When one views himself in such a negative manner, a person has no reason to attempt to accomplish anything in life. Why try, quote unquote, why try if I'm nothing anyway, is a thought felt by many people. And as a result, they end up never realizing their capabilities. Okay? If I'm worthless, so what's the use? This is certainly not what Hashem desires. It is important, therefore, for the reader to continue onward for clarity on what humility really is. We will discover, for example, that what is written in the text here must be understood in terms of man's relationship with God, or in comparison to what man's actual potential is. But never should a person view himself as nothing in absolute terms, as this is shattering to one's self-esteem, which is essential in order to serve Hashem properly. Okay? So you can go, the point is, you can go too far with taking the Orchot Tzaddikim's words and the gate of humility, and you will stunt any growth that you may potentially have. Okay? You're going to say, what's the use? I'm worthless. I'll never get what Hashem wants. It's impossible, so why bother trying? Okay. Then he says, the Orchot Tzaddikim said, although he's not worthy of it, the author makes it very clear that we are not really worthy of the goodness that Hashem showers upon us. Although we may be somewhat worthy in comparison to what Hashem does for us, we are not worthy. Just the study of the 15 Birchot Shachar, the morning brachot, alone gives one a glimpse of some of the incredible gifts that are granted to us on a daily basis. Now this one is going to be an interesting thing to fix on. He said, let's examine, for example, the blessing of Pokei Chivrim opens the eyes of blind. We say it every morning. Okay? Mm-hmm. The blessing is said by all, including people whose eyesight is fine. Why then are they saying it? Simply, the fact that we wake up each day and our eyesight is returned to us, one is asleep, one is like a blind person, is in itself so miraculous that there's nothing one does that makes him deserving of it. But there's also an unnoticed miracle which occurs each and every moment of the day, even when one is wide awake. You ready for this? Okay, here it is. There is a natural phenomenon that Hashem has built into the system of the world that we refer to as gravity. Okay? Incidentally, it is important to note that gravity is not natural at all. In fact, it is very unnatural. In order to move an object, one must apply force to it. Natural suggests that we should only have to apply a force in order to move the object in a downward direction, just as astronauts do in outer space. However, this is unnecessary since there's another force pulling downward. This force clearly is Hashem. So, okay, that's Hashem. Hashem gives us gravity. Without Hashem, we wouldn't have gravity. That's his point. You ready? People have accustomed themselves to objects falling naturally, when in actuality it is Hashem in the form of gravity. According to the laws of gravity, a person's eyelids should always be closed, because it's going down. In essence, making them blind. It is only due to the ongoing miracle that Hashem provides, which allows for one's eyes to remain open, as the blessing states. Pokeach ivrim. He opens the eyes of the blind. The word pokeach is in the present tense, meaning is ongoing. Who can honestly say that they are worthy of this miracle? Now he gives a story. An eye-opener. Many years ago, my Rebbe was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. Gravis. Never heard of this. I have to read books like this to get all these medical things. And what is it? It's a muscle-related condition that affects, among other things, the eyelids. He was admitted into the hospital to undergo a procedure to correct the condition. When visiting him before the procedure, I found him sitting in the bed holding a Gemara and learning from it in the following manner. Every 10 seconds, gravity would pull his eyelids down. So he tilted his head backward, causing gravity to pull them back open until they would fall again 10 seconds later as he looked down to the Gemara. And every 10 seconds, he repeated this so that he would continue his learning. After a few words of welcome, he said to me, this makes it easier to appreciate the bracha, the blessing of Pokeach Evrim. Okay? Because, again, we don't think about it, but naturally, our eyes should do what your eyes are doing, closing. Okay? And what happens is, when Hashem opens them, it allows us to keep it open. We'll tell you it's muscles, we'll tell you all these things. But it's really, we're fighting gravity. You never thought about that, right?
Point out, I mean, the muscles have to work on
it. Right. So, and that's only Hashem who gives us that ability to do it. Because again, naturally, you know what it's like? You ever see those dolls that we get by the kids when they're sitting? When they lie down. Right. So that's the whole sort of thing.
Wow.
That's what reminded me when I was reading this. So so then it says, and all the good, and now we're back in the text, and all the good things that I can do are nothing but a drop in the ocean compared to what I'm obligated to do. Fine. And he must do everything for the sake of heaven, not only for the sake of, I said that, I'm sorry. So then he says, back in the notes, compared to what I'm obligated to do, as Rabbeinu Yonah explains, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, which states, Kish'ani latzmi ma'ani. If I am for myself, what am I? Says Rabbeinu Yonah, even if I were to exhaust all of my efforts, I would still not be able to attain 1,000th of my obligations vis-a-vis Hashem. And the Chafetz Chaim was overheard conversing with Hashem in his later years, saying, Hashem, you have given me the ability to write the laws of Lashon Hara, to write the Mishnah Berurah, to maintain a yeshiva. You have done so much for me. What have I done for you lately?
Wow.
Okay? So again, it's all a way of keeping ourselves humble, but for the right reason. He didn't say it publicly, he said it to himself. And this guy overheard it. Fine. The person overheard it. He says, now we're back in the text. This is the root of humility. But if one humbles himself before Hashem, before he or one of his limbs is ailing, or when his children or loved one dies, or when he falls from his wealth or his greatness, or when he grows old. The truth is that humility and lowness are always acceptable to Hashem, but he has not reached true humility this way. In other words, when there's a reason for us to suddenly fall on to Hashem, and not because something's happening, that's not true humility. That's we're putting our money into the candy machine. So everybody knows that God is a candy machine, Coke machine, whatever machine you want to envision. And all we have to do is put our prayers and whatever else, or bake a couple of chalot, and take challah from the challah. That's the newest mishagas out there. Okay, so whatever it is, we just have to do all these gulot, and Hashem will suddenly come to the rescue. Well, that's the wrong way to do this. That's his point. That's the Orchot Tzaddikim's point. That's not it's not how you do it. One must conduct himself with humility in dealing with people and in monetary matters, to deal with all men beyond the letter of the law, and that's also something. He says, by the way, since you always talk about atheists, I'll give this. In 15 it says, but he has not reached. In other words, the concept there are no atheists in Foxhole is at most the last resort as far as relationship with Hashem goes. Although there is still a relationship as he is reaching out to Hashem, when the chips are down, the essence of humility is for one to humble himself before Hashem, even when things are at their best. Now that is really difficult too, by the way. When things are going horrible, Hashem suddenly hears us like we hear our kids. When things are going bad, suddenly everybody knows our number, and I'm talking about from our children or from our family. They know our number very well. Suddenly we're on speed dial, and we're going to get all the information every single time. When that goes away, suddenly so does speed dialing. So does WhatsApp. Suddenly there's no connection, right? You have to call. I remember when in the old days, before we had all these different things, when we would go to college, and my father was used to hearing from me, I guess. I don't know, I wasn't really calling that much, but he got used to hearing from us once in a while. And I would usually go to my brother in order to make the call, because in those days, again, there was no cell phones. You had to make it from the payphone or whatever else we're doing. And so he wanted to get everybody in for the 3 minutes he had. And for whatever reason, I was on campus, but I wasn't seeing my brother that much. And so as a result, we didn't make the call together. And I had a telephone in my room. It was hooked up to the old thing, but you had to pay if you were going to use it. But if somebody called in, they didn't have to pay for that. So that's how it worked. And on campus, you could.
How did you pay for an outgoing call?
They would charge you. It would go. Somehow they knew how to charge you.
Switchboard, and
somehow they would charge you. I don't know how I forget how they did it. You're making me go back too many years. But all I know is that on campus, they didn't charge you, so you could call anybody on campus. And then, but you want to make a long distance. Somehow they got you. And so again, you wanted to avoid those sort of charges.
Had an earlier type of switchboard system that would record, somehow would keep track.
So what happened was my father was concerned because he hadn't heard from me. Again, and my brother didn't see me because we weren't running in the same circles at that point. And I was going to Chabad or whatever it was, and he wasn't. So fine. So I get a call my father went to work at 6 a.m. And to call a college kid at 6 a.m, it's not cool. Okay. But my father called him like 5:30 or 6. And I was like, what happened? And I pick up I grabbed the telephone. Yeah, what happened? So my father said, are you all right? I said, Dad, what are you talking about? He said, I didn't hear from you.
Oh.
I said, everything's fine. Okay, go back to sleep. No, why'd you call? What's going on? Everybody good? So, no, I want to make sure you're all right. I didn't hear from you. So you called me at 5:30 in the morning? Yeah. Okay, I love you. Bye-bye. Okay, and I went, and I couldn't go back to sleep. I went at 5:30 in the morning that day, but it's I can't do. But I got the musar. You have to call your father. You have to call up and say what's going on, and it's not nice. But that's again when things are going well, and you're not thinking of things. You're in your own world, so you don't suddenly thinking of God anymore. And you may come to daven, and you may do all the things we're obligated to do, but the actual hitbodedut that we will do when things are going crazy. Suddenly we're on the road, we're talking to God. Okay, Rabbi Son, we have to have a discussion here. Okay. Right? That's when you stop talking. Otherwise, you're turn the radio on and you drive. No big deal. Okay, so that's what he's dealing with here. That's what he's trying to say. Okay. Let's go on a little. And then it says, he said, beyond the letter of the law, one who conducts himself in this manner is in the conduct of ma'avir al midotav, one who overcomes his natural tendency. His reward is that Hashem will go above and beyond by granting him longevity, which he would have otherwise not have merited. Okay, and what time? Okay, we can go a few more minutes. One must conduct himself with humility in dealing with people, and monetary. Oh, I said that. I'm sorry. Okay, and his entire conduct must be lowliness, with lowliness and pleasantness. Right. True humility consists of humbling oneself to those beneath him, such as servants, the members of the household, and those poor people who are fed and helped by him, and whom he does not need or fear. If one humbles himself before orphans, widows, and converts, and bears their trials and burdens, and hears himself degraded, but does not answer because of his great humility, this is a very high level of humility. And it says humbling oneself. These words need to be reinforced each time a person enters his home and finds himself less than satisfied with its cleanliness, reacting with anger or disgust toward those responsible for the mess, or behaving in an overbearing and aggressive manner in the presence of his wife, children, or a housekeeper is an example of a lack of humility the author is referring to. When a meshulach, a charity collector, comes knocking on the door, true humility requires that he be treated with the utmost respect, although it may appear that the meshulach is someone whom one has no need for, he being the one who needs the giver. The opposite is in fact true, as we'll explain in more detail in the chapter of generosity. The giver is actually benefiting more than the receiver. Anything less than a respectful attitude, whether verbal or by means of body language, would be considered a lack of humility. So when the Meshulach comes to your door, you're supposed to treat him as a malach. Yeah. Okay? A melech and malach at the same time. You shouldn't treat him as, I know, again, when people used to come to my door, my kids would say, they learned the word, not from me, Schnorra. Obviously, the Schnorra gets around. So they said a Schnorra. I said never.
On the East Coast.
Say it again?
It's a harder test on the East Coast to feel that way when people have Lishalachim coming through
right.
more often.
So somebody said a Schnorra, and I said, Chas v'shalom, never call them a Schnorra again. They are a malach from Hashem. We have a mitzvah to give tzedakah. They are giving us the opportunity to give tzedakah. They are mamash a malach from Hashem. How can you look down upon them? You give them something, you bring them in, you give them something to eat, and you so on and so forth. And then you give them. Obviously, you can't go broke, but you have to give them. If you have nothing, so at least a cup of coffee. Yeah. A Schnorra is a beggar. Oh. It's a Yiddish word for beggar.
It just sounds derogatory.
Right. It's like so many other words, but it's that. We'll stop here. But that is what you have to do. Again, you're humbling yourself because you're realizing that Hashem puts everything. Everybody has their job in this world, and if that person's job is to get your money, because he's doing what he has to do to make whatever Hashem put him in that situation. So we have no right to denigrate him or to grade him more than he already is. By the way, anybody's coming to your door, knocking on your door, and gives their story, regardless of yeshiva or what the heck they're doing, you have to feel bad for them. I mean, it's not a good situation. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.